welcome to the Talking with Tech podcast. My name is Chris Bugaj, and I'm here with...
Melissa Bugaj.
And...
Sara Gregory.
And, of course...
Rachel Madel.
Live in the flesh, we are hovered around the phone recording this at a table in the Airbnb that Sara and Rachel are staying in. We just wanted to say hello from ASHA 2021.
Yay! We're really excited. It's been a great conference.
It has been, right? We've seen good stuff.
Yes, we have.
We've had good fun.
I had a great day.
You weren't at ASHA.
I know, and I want to be so bad.
Come tomorrow because they're going to be talking about robots and playing games. We got all sorts of stuff. But, okay, besides ASHA, I thought we could do something else here fun for the podcast in general, right? So, and it's actually in relation to one of the most recent podcasts that came out, but I'll make that connection in a second. Okay. So, you know how I love games, right? You know, I love to play my games. Love to play games, right? You know how we love to play games at home, right? So one of the games I thought we would play is we each take a turn trying to think of a phrase or a song lyric. So a phrase from a movie or a song lyric, and we either do one of two things. Either start it and the rest of us would then finish it, or the second part would be, the second option would be to name where that is from, right? So I'll start as a kind of an idea, and then we'll go round robin around, right? Okay,
I'm ready.
So you can either finish this phrase or give me where this is from. You ready? Ready? Mm-hmm. Why is the carpet all wet, Todd?
I don't know, Margot.
Excellent. So you knew. And where is that from?
That is from Christmas Vacation.
Christmas Vacation. Now play along in the car if you're listening to this, in the car or on the treadmill or wherever you're listening. Play along. Well, we're going to keep guessing what these are. So who wants to go next? Who has one? A phrase. Now, Sara, I'm looking at you.
She's raising her hand.
Because I know you have young kids. So what are some of those things that you might say or hear your young kids say?
Wait, what, is it my turn?
You raised your hand.
I did. I raised my hand.
Girl in the back. Girl in the back.
That's me, Rachel. Okay, I don't know why this came into my head, but I'm going to go with it. You ready?
Okay, ready.
We will
rock you.
Perfect.
That is perfect, right? Okay, so that is from Queen, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent.
Luke, I am your
father. Yes. Now, most people would think Star Wars, but that is not actually Star Wars. Oh, sorry, I want to nerd out here for a second. That is actually The Empire Strikes Back, which is, of course, in the Star Wars universe.
Did you just fall more in love with me, though?
Yeah, I did. Come on, what are the chances? I was surprised, though, because I would have thought for sure you would have gone with a Marvel reference, not a Star Wars reference. But
I have a fun story to share. I just recently was doing the newest virtual reality. What is it called? The Oculus?
Oh, yeah.
The newest technology.
Yeah,
and it was a Star Wars game, and it was life-changing.
The Darth Vader one?
Yes.
Yeah, we have it.
It makes me sick to my stomach.
Of course
Okay,
it does. It makes me sick to my stomach.
But how scary is it, right?
So scary. So scary.
Yes.
I was scared. I was terrified.
And this is me.
And literally, when we climb up the ladder,
yes,
I was like, "This is insane."
Did you do the thing where we went over the lava?
Yes.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
And you're it's ridiculous, but it's so realistic,
it's
right?
So cool.
But that's why I'm coming to Hawaii, because then we can go over lava days.
Exactly. I'm into it.
Well, funny story about that, Rachel, is that you posted you doing that on your Instagram.
I did.
And now all of my Facebook ads are for Oculus. So, Creature report.
That is totally Octonauts, right? So, okay, yes, excellent, right? In the same vein of that is I'm the
map. I'm the map. My kids don't watch that.
Yes, this is Dora the
Explorer.
The Explorer. Exactly. Okay, one more. Let's do one more. Who's got anyone got one that you can think of? A song, a movie reference? Can you think of a movie reference?
Okay, I have a movie reference, but it's not going to be a fill-in. Okay, so this is my kid's new favorite movie, and it's a throwback from a movie that I used to watch when I was younger. So see if you can get it. Ooh, it was a Run by Fruity. Mrs. Doubtfire. Yes.
That was great.
All right, so that was Mrs. Doubtfire. Amazing. So here's why I wanted us to go through this exercise. And I bet if we asked everyone listening, they could come up with a whole bunch of other like bits that they do with their friends or their family or things like that, right? And so why I brought it up is because this is what I was thinking about. Actually, this is what I was thinking about when you recorded with Alexandria Zakos, right? And she was talking about that Gestalt language learning. And the way it was framed in that episode was you either a Gestalt language learner or you're an analytic language learner. And I think it might be more of a sliding scale that I don't know for sure, right? This is me speculating. But I wonder if like we all have certain things, phrases that kind of stick in your mind, that earworm when of a song that you just can't, that new Taylor Swift song just came out where she's razzing Jake Gyllenhaal. And it's like, it's stuck in your brain over and over and over again, right?
He doesn't care. He doesn't care. And he's not paying attention. And he has her scarf.
Let's talk about things that matter.
But you see what I'm saying there? Like there's things that get stuck in our brain like that way and become part of part of like our scripts of what we say and what we do in our family and our friends and how we think of things. And I just wonder about that is that I wonder when I was a kid and I learned the words roll out, you know, it's because Autobots. Exactly. Autobots roll out because I grew up with the Transformers. And is that like the first ever time that I learned about roll out? And I would use that now all the time. We're going to roll out a plan today with our action plan we're going to roll it out. Like, I wonder if that's not how I originally learned it. Meaning, I'm probably more of an analytic, like I probably learned it more analytically, but it doesn't mean that I'm not also a Gestalt learner. And I wonder if that's the same thing for the students that we work with, that there's like maybe they're more Gestalt learners, but occasionally they also are a little bit more of analytic, and then it's not just so black and white. So what are your thoughts? What do you think about that as a...
I just fell in love with you.
There's a lot of love happening on this podcast.
I was just like, oh my gosh, that was like really profound. And yes, I can totally see that because there's things that I will use with kids. Like when I'm thinking something through, I say I want to noodle it through with them and they have go noodle. And so it like brings a positive, they love go noodle. So it brings a positive feeling to them. And they're like, you said noodle.
And can you think of a lot of other scripts that you might just say yourself because it's just like in your environment or it's in your repertoire that like I said, that the first one, that Margot thing, we say that all the time. Like
we have shirts.
Yeah, we have shirts that say, I don't know, Margot. And we say it all the time when it's like, where do you want to go to eat? I don't know, Margot. It just comes out. We don't really think through the I don't know Margot. It just becomes part of the script, you know? Yeah. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's really interesting. One of the takeaways from the Alexandria Zakos episode for me was that it has to be emotionally charged. And I feel like, you know, movies, songs, like they all like evoke emotion in us. And it's interesting to think about. I love this idea of a kind of a sliding scale, right? It's not black and white. And I think like, you know, hopefully everyone who's listening is thinking, how can I incorporate more of these scripts? I know that like my mind was blown after that episode. And I really started, you know, going down these rabbit holes of Gestalt language processing, thinking, okay, I think I've been doing this a little wrong. One, I've been focusing on, you know, analytic processing, single words, build one step at a time. But how can we kind of marry these two approaches? And especially because we know our kids who are non-speaking, you know, it's so hard to know if they're Gestalt language processors. Right. Like, how do we know? So I think that maybe we should just start thinking through this lens a little bit more for all of our students as kind of a catch-all so that we're able to, you know, make sure that we're doing the best thing for the students that we serve.
Maybe you think of that everybody's both. Yeah. Right? And some people are just a little bit more or a little bit less of one or the other, but you support all of it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And one thing that I've been thinking through with Gestalt language processing in AAC is that one of the things that I feel like gets it stuck in our head is the intonation. And that's what you talked about in the episode too, right? So when you're using an AAC device, even if you were to say the Gestalt, it doesn't have the intonation. So for one of my students, he sometimes uses spoken language, but when he does, it's in a phrase or Gestalt. Like when I come for speech, he says, not again. Although he loves speech. He loves speech. But anyways, one thing that we're having a hard time with is when it's not time for him to have his cell phone, he gets really angry. And so he's not going to his device, even though we're modeling some things. And so one thing I want to try is he loves South Park, he loves Thomas, and finding a clip from a show that would say something like, I'm annoyed, or give me my phone, or something that might communicate, and to give him options of things that might communicate how he's feeling, but to say it in a gestalt with like the intonation of something that he's interested in.
Yes, I feel like that could be programmed in as like, oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Yeah.
So I know that. So I'm just learning about this as I'm standing here.
Right.
In real time, I'm learning about gestalt.
I'm so excited.
You're the non-speech therapist in the group.
But I'm a junior speech
You are.
therapist.
You
I have a
badge.
I do. I've been married for like way too long. So I had an IEP this week, and they were talking about learning multiplication facts. And she has paired each number with a song kids will know. Mm-hmm. So the 8s are Jingle Bells, and Frere Jacques is the 6s. Mm-hmm. And so the kids, she said, will be sitting in the class, and when they're taking their timed, don't get me started on the timed ones, but timed multiplication facts, she's like, if I know where they're at based on the tune being hummed in my class.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So they will just, she's like, I have Frere Jacques, I have, Happy Birthday going on, and I have Jingle Bells going on in my room.
See, these are
that
amazing
intonation is where it was,
We know these intuitively at a young age, right? We use these with young children all the time, and then somewhere it dies off. And when it gets like, why do we not use them continuously? Songs.
This was fourth grade. I mean, this is fourth grade too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, being in high school, they get embarrassed when you do these things.
Do you think so? Because I don't know. I think if they played like contemporary music and tied things to contemporary music, they'd be totally into it, right? If they did like kindergarten nursery rhymes, then they'd be offended. Yeah. But if you tied it to that Taylor Swift song, oh my gosh, they'd be into it, totally.
We actually were talking about Cornell earlier, and we have a couple, I'm in Ithaca, so Cornell University is in our hometown, and there's students who have made this program called Rap Study, and so they take popular songs and then put academic content into the songs. So we have a partnership with them in our district, and so some teachers can say, this is what I'm teaching about, and then send them the content, and they pick a song, and it's like Lizzo. And I'm amazed. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
I sign up.
Mm-hmm. So I know there's been another tool out there. If you want to go again, if you're listening to this, Flowcabulary. Have you heard of Flowcabulary?
I love
again, same idea, right? Same idea.
So fun.
Cool. So everyone back listening there. So we're around a table right now having fun chatting about this. But hopefully you can think about this as well and how you can implement it in your own practice. All right. So that was a great conversation, everybody. So Rachel, tell us about the interview today.
You know what, Chris? It's super exciting because I just saw this person live at ASHA. Rachel Dorsey is who I interviewed, and I have to say, it was a fantastic session. She actually got a standing ovation, which was like amazing. And she was talking all about neurodiversity, affirming practices. And that's what she came on our podcast to talk about. She has a course on goal writing, which is really exciting. And actually our listeners get a discount code. So the code is Madel, my last name, 30. And that gets you 30% off her course. And I'm super excited that she was so generous to offer that to us. And I'm really excited to share this interview. We talk all about neurodiversity. What does that mean? How does it affect what we're doing with the students that we serve? And I'm really excited because she was super passionate. She killed it at ASHA. And I'm super excited that even if you weren't in ASHA, you can still enjoy the conversation that I had with her.
I cannot wait to listen to this interview with Rachel Dorsey. Hey there! If you love listening to this podcast, we would be so grateful for your support to keep it going. By becoming a Patreon member, you can not only help us cover the cost of this podcast, but you can get some really great bonus content as well. We post video tutorials, behind-the-scenes recordings, and bonus segments from our interviews. We would love for you to join us by going to patreon.com/talkingwithtech. That's patreon.com/talkingwithtech.
Welcome to Talking with Tech. I'm your host, Rachel Madel, joined today by Rachel Dorsey. Rachel, I'm super excited to have you on today. This has been a long time coming, this interview, and I'm really excited that you came on and you're going to share all of your experience with us. So first, just start off by introducing yourself and telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and the experience that you've had.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, thank you for having me. I am a speech language pathologist, but I am also autistic, and I have ADHD, and I've been a speech language pathologist for about 5.5 years, and I'm really passionate about helping autistic people of all ages, particularly pediatrics, just because that's what most of my experience has been in. And I have my own private practice and / consultancy where I provide professional developments regarding neurodiversity-affirming practices, and yeah, that's kind of what's going on for me. I also have a course that I released recently through Learn, Play, Thrive on goal writing for autistic students. And it's pretty comprehensive, and it goes just through a bunch of case studies and a variety of situations. And yeah, that's what's going on with me.
I love it. I'm really excited. We're going to dive into some of the topics of the course, which is all about goal writing, which I'm really pumped that you just released that, because I feel like goal writing is such an area of struggle for all of us SLPs.
So listen, I picked the driest subject, to be honest. and like, no one likes goals, and no one feels like they're good at goals. True. And I picked it because people a year ago were asking, when I didn't have that big of a following, or people didn't know that much about me, were like asking for advice, and the top 2 topics were goals and social skills. And then I'm like, well, you need to have goals before you can do anything about social connection building and that sort of thing. So I just went the logical route, and then that's kind of how things started. But it's a really immersive course. I tried to make it as immersive as possible with like case study, and then bam, turns out the parent only wants oral speech, or like bam, turns out that the kid is in a really behaviorally based setting. How are you going to make this work?
I think that we all learn so much through each other's experiences. And I feel like the idea of case studies really resonates with me, because it's like and I'm sure you can relate to this too. So many people reach out to me and they're giving me a case study, right? They're like, I have a student, they're 10 years old, and they give me all this information. And it's like, what do I do? And so I feel like it's a really practical way to learn, though, because we can all relate to, at some level, some of the kind of topics of a case study, or the, diagnoses and all of the things that we are involved in that. And then it's like, okay, now what do we actually do? Mm-hmm. And I think it helps guide the process of our clinical decision-making skills. Mm-hmm. Like, why are we deciding this versus this? And what's the kind of theory behind it? But I like it so practical, because I know you've probably experienced this too. There's so many professional development courses where I'm like, cool, I know a great theory and a great framework, but I have no idea how to apply it to my clinical practice.
Yeah, that was exactly what I tried to avoid, because of that frustration of you're telling me all about an intervention or a way of doing things. I have no idea what it looks like. I have no way to apply it. Some courses don't even do that, are just pure theory. And so then what?
Yes, exactly. And it's like, and I feel like I leave thinking, cool, now what do I do with that information? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So for our listeners out there who are like, what is neurodiversity? Can you just define what that is? And and how it kind of relates to what we do is, you know, a lot of speech language pathologists listen to this podcast. We also have teachers and parents and other professionals too. But what is neurodiversity?
Yeah, so neurodiversity is has actually existed. The concept has existed for quite a while. It was coined in 1998 by Judy Singer, an autistic advocate. But it means that all brains are different through a combination of genetic and environmental factors. That's it. That's what neurodiversity means. And so, I mean, to I guess get into more vocabulary, more definitions, then we get into like being neurodivergent, which was coined by another autistic advocate, Kassiana Sasamasu, where like that's a person or a brain that is different. That's different from like the quote unquote typical type of brain. And like a neurodivergent person, we commonly and including in like this podcast largely talk about it regarding autism as a type of neurodivergence, but it really extends far beyond that into children with language or people with language disorders, dyslexia, apraxia, bipolar, ADHD, Tourette's. It's just all of these differences or divergencies from kind of the quote unquote typical type of a brain.
That is actually a really important distinction, because I think you're right. I think we oftentimes just like equate autistic with neurodivergent, but what you're saying is it's more of like an umbrella term that includes all brains that, you know, might be different, which I think is an important distinction to make. And so your course your course is a neurodiversity affirming approach. So can you kind of break down what that means? Again, for people who are like, I'm just learning about neurodiversity, what does a neurodiversity affirming approach mean?
Yeah, so neurodiversity affirming really encompasses kind of a wide variety of things. And I feel like it encompasses more of like an ethics approach, as opposed to like you do this and you don't do this and you do this and then you don't do this. So it comes down to, respecting everyone's differences and seeing your students or clients through the strengths that they have, and not through just like a list of the deficits that we all see in their evaluation reports. And it includes listening to members of that community. So if you're treating students that have dyslexia, then you should find out what dyslexic adults have to say about that. So it goes beyond autism. Like it goes kind of into a whole type of thinking about practice. However, my course is specific to autism. It's goal writing for autistic students. So a neurodiversity affirming approach to autism. So listening to the autistic community, also being aware specifically with the autistic community that it can be difficult to interpret the behaviors or differences that are in a client whose neurotype is different than yours. And I think acknowledging that like this is difficult, like having a non-speaking autistic student, and just being able to acknowledge that you as a clinician aren't going to know exactly what to do all of the time, and that's okay. And it's okay to not have an answer right then, and relating and just kind of relating it back to like building the relationship and just solidifying that, even if you don't know exactly like how to do X or Y or Z that's on your treatment plan.
Yeah, I think that's a really important reminder for everyone, because we oftentimes feel like we have to know all the answers, and we have to have like, especially when we're in an IEP meeting or we're talking with a family, having to know all the answers. And I think that, the point you bring up about listening to the community of people that have the experience, the shared experience of the client that you're working with, is such a powerful one. On this podcast, we interview AAC users, and we do that because we want to hear what it's like to be an AAC user and how we can change the way that we work with AAC users to better support them. And I think what's really cool is that now with the, easy access to information through social media and, the internet, now we're able to listen to autistic adults, and we're able to listen to, all different kinds of, people who have different experiences, and that can adapt the way that we work with the clients that we serve. And I think where we kind of fall into trouble is where we're just like kind of in this like laser focused view about what we should be doing. And I love that you brought up the point of neurotypes that are different than yours. Like the first step perhaps is just like understanding that you're not going to understand completely, the experience of another. Right.
That's okay. I wouldn't expect anyone to, well, first of all, like not all, even though if there's like the autistic community, there are very different opinions even within the autistic community on what to how to best serve autistic children. And so I would say like kind of when seeking knowledge, kind of find the bigger themes that keep jumping out.
Okay, so we're kind of sharing, I think one of the first steps is just kind of acknowledging the differences. I think that that's an important step too, because I think oftentimes we're just trying to put all of these expectations on the students that we work with based on, again, our experience. And part of it is too, we're not taught this, right? In graduate school, like we're not taught, unfortunately, how to think through a neurodiversity-affirming lens. And I think that that's part of the problem, and hopefully we'll see that change in the future. Are there other ways that educators or SLPs or parents can start kind of thinking through this lens, besides just kind of listening to the communities of people that, we're talking about? Is there any other things that can happen that we can kind of start shifting our perspectives?
I mean, I think the best way to target, I mean, this will help anyone in with working with like any population, but it's just really important is like asking why. I feel like we don't ask, or some people or a lot of people don't ask why something is happening. Why is the student being disruptive right now? Why did they demonstrate they could do something last week and then this week they can't do it? Why did they go from not doing anything at all to all of a sudden, boom, being able to do something that we never even thought they were capable of doing? So yeah, I think constantly asking why, in addition to constantly reflecting back on because sometimes in the moment it's hard to ask why, and so you can do that later. I think like reflecting later and asking why, or thinking about what's something that the thing that happened didn't go exactly according to plan. What's the way? Like, why is that? is there something in the environment? Is it something I did? Is it just an off day? Is it, and then just shifting, what you try doing next time according to that, like, self-reflection. And I understand that, like, that advice can be kind of broad and, like, isn't like do this and then do this, but really, like, that is how you get into thinking about your students, particularly your autistic students, through a more neurodiversity affirming lens.
Yeah, I think that's really important to kind of think about. I mean, I love the idea of asking why, because I think oftentimes we're just like kind of, especially in the moment, it's hard. One of the best things I think you can do as a clinician or just generally as a communication partner is watch yourself back on video. And like, there's so many opportunities for like, oh my gosh, wow, I didn't even realize like, this was happening, or like he started banging his hand on the table. Like maybe like he was trying to regulate. And so I think being really curious and of course, like, watching back, if you have the opportunity to watch, your sessions back, I think can be really powerful. I think it also kind of comes back to this idea of, really trying to remember that as therapists, we're trying to support students. And I think that, oftentimes we're so laser focused on our goals and our strategies that like, if a child's showing us, something different than like what we had planned or what we were intending to work on, we're so rigid in our thinking of like, okay, I have to do this specific thing, that we're like, wow, like maybe he's thirsty. Like maybe this banging on the table is like, he needs some type of sensory input, and really just remembering that like, in order to learn, we need to be ready to learn, right? And there's lots of kind of things that go into that. But also just like, let's just support the students that we're working with, and thinking maybe outside the box of what that looks like. And I think it starts with just like having open communication with students, and also being kind of detectives for our kids who don't necessarily have access to, enough language to communicate those things to us. Kind of that's what our job is, right? Is like coming in and giving that language and teaching that language. So anyway, I just think that part of it is just thinking like, take a step back and be like, how can I support the kid that's right in front of me right now?
Right. I completely agree. And I think that, honestly, in situations where like, I'm not sure what exactly, what, like the why is something that I'll reflect on later. But in the moment, the best thing that I can do is co-regulate with a student, because I know that is the thing that's needed. Like we're like no demands. Co-regulate could mean different things to different students. It could mean being kind of near them and like holding arms out and kind of offering a hug. It could mean getting to the other side of the room and just sort of me drawing on paper, doing my own thing. And then the student is able to, without me being directly next to them, kind of get some space. And I think really, ethically, as far as like supporting our students' mental health, particularly autistic students who face a lot of traumas and pretty regularly, being that person that's willing to kind of put what we were going to do on hold and just like have a session of co-regulation may seem like atypical, may seem like that's not a skilled service, but it is, because you're assessing what the student needs and that is what they need, and you're giving them what they need in order to, for the future, be like have greater rapport, feel just more socio-emotionally secure. So I'm a big fan of kind of just taking a step back, kind of reducing it all and just being there with the client.
Yeah. And I think that, a lot when we're talking in the AAC world is we're talking about connection. Like it starts with connection and, that looks different for different kinds of students. And I think just like building that connection, obviously gives us a lot of information content, like you mentioned, about what we could do in the future to, better regulate. But I also think that it builds trust. And I think that a lot of the kids that we work with, you already mentioned trauma. I think they've experienced so much trauma from the adults around them that it doesn't feel like a safe place, and if we can create that safe space, think about all the potential that's opened up. When we go into a situation of communication where we have anxiety and, any of us, like we're not going to perform the same as when we feel like we're in a safe space with someone who is safe, to be around and to communicate with. And I feel like that's a huge part that's oftentimes missing. We kind of just like roll in and we're like, okay, what do you like? Let me just pull things out of a bag and, kind of force this interaction. When sometimes we just need to slow it down and to really observe instead of, trying to get kids to like actively participate.
And the same way that like we as adults can like sense a forced interaction, like people can sense forced interactions. Kids can sense forced interactions. Autistic people can sense when you are just sort of faking being interested in our favorite thing. And so I think being just genuine with it goes an extremely long way.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. So when we're thinking about, we kind of mentioned AAC a little bit. I'm really excited. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of the goals and parts of your course, because I'm really excited to share that with our audience and definitely like recommend everyone go sign up for this course. I'm like excited to take it too. But thinking about AAC, because oftentimes we hear, especially when we're thinking about autistic students who do have verbal speech, that maybe it's not necessary, when we know, it can be really helpful to have a backup system for communication. It also can be a great tool to teach language. What are your thoughts on AAC and, how we can get more people on board? One of the biggest questions we get asked on the podcast is like, how do you get people to buy into AAC? Because a lot of the people listening are like, yeah, I'm all about AAC, but it's like, how do I get everyone else to be all about it? So I'm curious if you have any strategies or, thoughts on that topic specifically.
On getting people on board with AAC, if the student is able to sometimes or even usually use spoken language?
Yes.
Oh, well, see, then we get into a bigger discussion of that using AAC makes a person stand out more. And it makes a person look, some parents are concerned like, oh, it'll take language away, then we can show the research, right? And the research is like, no, it won't. And so but then some parents are still resistant. And so we kind of peel back the layers and see, okay, what's underneath this? And I feel like underneath it, not just parents, but like just society, is that disabilities, disabled people being openly disabled is uncomfortable for people to see. And they're not sure what to do. And to get around that, it requires a lot of, in my experience, having to not necessarily even address AAC, but to go back further and undo the damage that society has done in how parents think of disabilities. And since I work with a lot of autistic students, particularly autism, and working through that then leads to various changes in thinking. So I know the question was specific to AAC, but it goes deeper into that, to a societal problem.
Yeah. And I think it kind of also speaks to the idea, circling back to changing the way we think about neurodivergent brains, right? Like if we think about, autistic individuals through that perspective, it's not something that, we need to be, hiding or ashamed of or anything like that, because we're thinking about like what beautiful gifts all brains have to, share with our, community. And I think that circling back to that, I think that, you're very right in the sense of, it's bigger than AAC. Oftentimes AAC is like the thing that we can latch onto to be like, oh, like they just don't want to, their child to talk, through a device. But like, why? Right? Like, because it makes them appear like definitively disabled. And it's obvious. Whereas, perhaps if it weren't for the AAC, that, it might go kind of under the radar, if you will. So maybe like, and then I love that it's a bigger discussion. It's a bigger kind of problem. And I'm all about when you're trying to solve problems and trying to understand what the roadblocks are, like we need to dig deeper, right? Like we need to figure out what's actually at play here. And I think that just, involves asking a lot of questions and being curious and trying to share information. And I feel like you have such a unique experience too, Rachel, because you are autistic. And so like, that's so powerful for probably the families that you work with.
I mean, like when so I guess now in private practice, since it's in my brand name, like business name, that I'm autistic, so I can't get around it. But before I only sometimes disclosed that I was autistic, and even with the families who weren't, who were like very hesitant to accept that their child was autistic, I didn't necessarily bring up that I'm autistic, because then that could set up a this person here is a speech therapist and married, and like I don't want to. I want to make it clear that their child's value is separate from what they could have a job or marry. And of course, parents are going to want those things for their kid, and it's the kind of the first things that they get scared about. But often when I talk to parents who are uncomfortable with autism, about autism, and I don't mention that I'm autistic, I really help the parents see themselves in their child, because often they're at a point where their child's doing these things they don't understand. Their child isn't interacting with them in a way that they see. That's obviously like a very neurotypical means of displaying affection. And so they feel very separate from their child, and like they lost their child. And I really try to help the parent see themselves and their child, how the way that the child is experiencing the world. There's a lot of commonalities between that and everyone, but you specifically too. And that's been really helpful, I found, in helping parents get it more without like bringing out like a paper of like, here's neurodiversity, and here's like all these great things about like your child's autistic, and which can come across like preachy. I want it to be like practical, like the parent can genuinely start to see the child for who they are and appreciate the child for who they are. And understand a child for who they are.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, because I think that ultimately sometimes, again, I think if we're thinking about, perhaps neurotypes that are different than ours, it's hard for us to kind of observe those things. But it sounds like what you try to do is guide parents through that process, and reveal things to them that maybe they didn't notice or observe before, which I think is really, really helpful. And I think it's also helpful advice for us to kind of think through that lens as well, when we're working with students, is really just being an active observer and trying to find those commonalities, I think, because they exist. I think they're just not as apparent or obvious initially.
And the commonalities could be commonalities like a kid is, to use a pretty common but stereotyped example, a kid is lining up trains, and I'm like, oh wow, look, she put them in a really straight, perfect line. That's a lot like how when I am organizing my DVD set, I try to get them in like the right alphabetical order. And then if like one is like out of alphabetical order, I try to put it in the right spot. So I try to, like, even though those aren't the same, there's an underlying theme of some, like, trying to find order in something that's visual.
I love that. I think that it's like a practical thing where there is that common overarching theme there. And I think that, anchoring into something that people understand is really helpful for people, which I love. Okay. So I'm curious, we're kind of thinking like, how can we work with family members, educators? I'm curious to talk just a little bit about self-advocacy, because I think that I'm anticipating that part of your goal writing course is addressing that, because it's such an important skill to start teaching. All of our students, I think, could benefit from that, but especially our students with complex communication needs. So I'm curious what your experience has been, and how that can translate to the students that we work with. Like, what kinds of self-advocacy goals can we think about? And like, what are the things that we need to be teaching our students so that they can, advocate for the things that they need?
Yeah. So self-advocacy is I do go into that in my course, and the course is like 7.5 hours of filmed footage. So like, I wish I could have gone into self-advocacy more, but it was already really long. You're probably gonna hear more about it than I filmed in the course regarding kind of how I conceptualize self-advocacy, which is, I mean, it's knowing what you need and then being able to get what you need. So knowing what you need and acting on what you need are different skills that are obviously related. I think early on in life, the autistic child or autistic children have an intuition of what they need, and that's expressed through like a lot of sensory like regulation strategies are really early on in life. And then I see society and well-intended or intentioned therapists and teachers wanting those obvious displays of sensory differences, or obvious displays of communication differences, want that to kind of go away, and so they become suppressed, and then once they're kind of suppressed, it's hard to then rebuild the student being able to then like know what they need. I mean, I see a lot of autistic kids that are in older elementary school, and they don't even know what they need. So I think teaching about like helping kind of relearn about like, you know, listening to your body and being able to assign some sort of label wording to what is happening, and perhaps eventually an emotion to it, as far as self-advocacy goes, is extremely important in order to get to that first step, the what do I need? And then the second step, acting on that need, is also really, really difficult, because autistic students have years of they acted on the need. They were maybe like me as a really young autistic child, like spitting out food and putting it back in my mouth, and spitting out food and putting it back in my mouth. Actually, I did that until age of 10. I wasn't super young. And you know, I still am like an oral sensory seeker. Like I'm wearing my Chewy right now. And you know, that I was acting on my need, but that was considered shameful. So then it stopped. And so there's a lot of repeated cases of autistic children trying to act on needs, just even like crying, trying to show I need something. Mm-hmm. And it's disruptive behavior of autistic children. You know, throwing, disruptive behavior, although it really is demonstrated, I need something. Mm-hmm. And so really both parts of self-advocacy here are from a really young age, but then consistently throughout the autistic person's life, just shut down. So mm-hmm. by the time that the autistic kid is in high school, trying to teach self-advocacy skills is really, really hard. And I mean, in the course, I have a lot of self-advocacy goals, and they're specifically actually is the kids, the older kids that are in there, like the adolescents. I know it's going to be a very, very long process to get there, to like in the moment be able to like say what you need or have boundaries or something. So my criteria, my measurement criteria and my like setting are just like 1-to-1 and like 70%, because I just know it's really, really hard to undo. I keep on saying the word undo, but like undo society's damage and like the damage of a well-intentioned educational system at that point.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a really good point, and this idea of masking, which I think is like, we're starting to kind of learn more about what that is and what that looks like. And it's like, you know, it doesn't make sense to have to unlearn all these things if we can just from the start be more inclusive and really just look at everything a child is showing you as information, and being curious as to why it's happening, instead of this idea that it's maladaptive or it needs to be extinguished, or all these things that we're now learning is like, it's just not, that's not the right course of action.
Right. And it just causes so much damage to all autistic children.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about your course. Are there any like gems of wisdom you can share, or, you know, talk a little bit more about the course? I'm really excited. 7 hours. Wow. That's a long course.
It's a 7. Yeah. It's 7.5 hours. It is, I provide with case studies and I try to make it really practical, like true to life types of situations, not like the ideal type of situation that, that's encountered. And the case studies, I kind of show you how to go along with me in creating goals. So it actually counts for 10 and a half ASHA CEUs, because there is an element of you having to stop the video and like coming up with things and then, seeing if they don't have to necessarily perfectly align with what I propose, but saying if the general concepts are similar or not. What else? Oh, regarding AAC, that's a pretty big part of the goals that I write. This was driven out of just being so infuriated by, like in the IEP, it says like, yes, the AAC should be available at all times. Great. It's not. Like you walk in and it's not. It's in the backpack. Student's not able to access it. It's been taken away because the kid is pressing one button repeatedly. So, I try to safeguard against that by directly including in goals for multimodal communicators, like given like unrestricted access to high and low tech AAC, and like start off with that, which is like repetitive, and that like in the IEP it already says that like AAC is given, but now it's personal, because like now it's affecting my ability to do my job, because now it's in my goals. Mm-hmm. And so it just allows more protection for the students' right to access their whatever form of AAC that they are using. A lot of the goals I write do serve kind of a protective function. I embed in there how the student is going to demonstrate the said skill, but I accept for a lot of the students like gestures, verbalizations, vocalizations, spoken word, AAC, actions, facial expression, body language. Because while, we're working towards a more symbolic form of communication, we should always respect how a student is communicating with us through these other modalities. I try to. The goals are a little lengthy, but there's only one comma, I believe. I think that's the rules. Like, they should only have one comma, and I do that. But it is out of protecting the student, because you don't know if what's going to happen to you as the provider. Like, you may get another job, you may be put in another school, you may, the student may be put on someone else's caseload. And then if the goal isn't written in a very clear laid out way of like, here is how this student should be respected in trying to reach this target skill, then the student could, at the very worst, be at the very best, like not learn anything, and at the very worst, be traumatized.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that, we oftentimes will see like, multimodal communication embedded into a goal, which I think is important. I love that you specify what that looks like, because I think sometimes it's used as like an umbrella term. But more importantly, I love this idea of given unrestricted access, because it's literally like, if you're doing this goal, the AAC system must be there. Yeah. And if it's not, then like we can't even really take criterion or benchmarks on those goals, right?
Yeah.
Like,
now you, other staff member, are impacting my ability to do my job. So, yeah.
Exactly. And oftentimes what happens is we get feedback from, school-based SLPs all the time saying like, oh, like, no one has the device out and, but now it's like directly impacting a child's ability to make progress. And again, we always get from school-based SLPs, like, I have to make progress on the goals. Like it's so goal driven, which, in a lot of respects it should be, but it's like the way we write our goals is so impactful and so important. And so I love this idea of including this. It might be a little wordy, but like, let's do it anyway.
I don't care that it's wordy. It's like, I care first and foremost about protecting the student and the students being respected. So there you go.
Love that. Okay. So for people who are like, yes, to all these like ideas and these goals, I need more from Rachel Dorsey. How do people access your course?
Yeah. So my course, if you go to Learn, Play, Thrive, so learnplaythrive.com/goals, you'll be able to sign up. But yeah, it's just there.
Perfect.
The easiest way to find it.
We'll definitely link to that in the show notes. I'm curious, Rachel, I love your perspective and all the information you shared has been awesome. I definitely advocate for everybody who is working with autistic students, which is most people, go take Rachel's course. I'm sure you have tons more gems of wisdom to share and frameworks and ideas and practical information in there. I'm curious, what, if you had a takeaway for everyone, working with autistic students, a message that you'd like to share with everyone, what do you think that message would be?
This isn't actually something that we've previously discussed. But I mean, it goes into the themes of what we discussed, is that consent and dissent are for all students extremely important. For autistic students, not more important because it's important for everyone, but it's often harder to read in our autistic students. So we need to pay a really close attention to the really subtle ways that our kids are letting us know, no, this isn't okay, or like, yeah, this is okay.
Yeah, I think that's exactly, that's a really great takeaway. And also, again, for kids with complex communication needs, that is incredibly important to really see in perhaps nonverbal ways, how our kids are communicating with us, what they need from us, instead of, kind of coming in with this idea in our heads about what we're going to do and how a child should act, accordingly. I think just being like really curious and observant, I think is a really good skill.
Yep.
Amazing. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on today. You have been amazing. I knew it was going to be everything I thought it would be and more. I am curious. So people can follow you on social media, right? At Rachel Dorsey? Or what?
Yeah, so I think Dorsey SLP might have already been taken on Instagram. So it's R Dorsey SLP on Instagram. On Facebook, just type in Rachel Dorsey Autistic SLP. And I mean, I have my website, which is dorseyslp.com.
Amazing. Thank you again for coming on, Rachel. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
I know, 2 Rachels together just talking about autistic students and goals and AAC. I love it.
Thank you.
For Talking with Tech, I'm Rachel Madel, joined by Rachel Dorsey. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.